My talk for today is loving yourself. Every thought, belief, feeling, or action, every bit of matter or energy in all its amazing, different, diverse, and unique forms evolves out of the limitless one we call infinite intelligence or God. When the knowledge of this unity comes alike to all, the tread of armies will cease, and the bugle call will echo the soft notes of brotherly love. That's Dr. Holmes. My next quote: if you aren't good at loving yourself, you will have a difficult time loving anyone, since you'll resent the time and energy you give another person that you aren't even giving to yourself. And that's Barbara D. Angelis. So I call this talk Loving Yourself, simply that, which for me has turned out not to be so easy. In fact, as much as I have studied and grown in my awareness and consciousness, I find I still spend quite a bit of time not loving myself. And by that, I mean beating myself up, thinking something, someone, or some circumstance is against me, not thinking well of others, not thinking well of my choices. And these are just the ways I don't love myself that I can think of at the moment. I'm sure there are others I've even forgotten to mention. What I know is that anytime I am not feeling in love with myself and the life I am living, I am not loving myself and made something besides loving myself a higher priority. So this is my New Year's resolution, to have loving myself be my highest priority. Not the goals I've set to achieve this year, not being of service, not giving, not receiving, loving myself. Now, all those other things I mentioned, goals to achieve, being of service, giving, receiving, these might be ways we love ourselves. But I've noticed that if those things become the priority, as opposed to a means to the most important priority, which is loving ourselves, we wind up taking actions or feeling feelings that don't feel very loving to ourselves or others at all. So here's an example of what I'm talking about. Sometimes I am loving about being of service. In fact, most of the time it feeds my soul and I feel very deeply in the throes of love while doing whatever it is I'm doing to be of service. Like doing these talks on Wednesdays. I love doing these talks on Wednesdays. So it doesn't only feed those who listen and watch, but feeds me so that I am loving myself. But if I'm doing something that may be of service to others, but I feel resentful, upset, or in any other way not loving about it, then I'm not loving myself. Even if doing it the last time, I did feel like I was loving myself, it doesn't feel loving. If it doesn't feel loving this time, and I'm not spending time paying attention to the fact it doesn't feel loving and shift something around that, I have made the act of service my priority over loving myself, thereby depleting myself. Do you understand what I'm saying about this? You can do something that even was loving before but isn't loving this time. And so that means you've made the doing of what it is you're doing the priority over loving yourself. And so then it doesn't have the same energy. And it's not only then depleting to you, but probably doesn't feel as great to the person you're being of service to as well. So what about sacrifice? Doesn't Jesus say in Matthew 16:24-25, if anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. A Bible quote. Crazy, I know. It's not. I believe that may be the first Bible quote I've used since I've started doing these talks. But anyway, what does he mean by this? I believe every time Jesus says, for my sake or through me, he is talking about the Christ consciousness he's trying to teach his disciples and anyone else who's willing to listen that exists in all of us. He didn't mean to give up ourselves, just the part of ourselves that keep us separate from the love that always exists for all of us. Dr. Holmes tells us every day and every hour We are meeting the eternal realities of life, and in such a degree as we cooperate with these eternal realities in love, in peace, in wisdom, and in joy, believing and receiving, we are automatically blessed. Jesus was talking about the blessing that there is for all of us when we get beyond what we think or we believe to be true, that we think will make us happy, to the real joy that exists in love. He did not mean to sacrifice our love for ourselves, but to grow our love for ourselves through letting anything that is in the way of knowing that love go. For him, it wasn't sacrifice the way we think of it today. It was a way of being that bathed us in love in all the time without the distractions of possessions or anything else. And we are so easily distracted by goals, by things, by what we deem important at any given moment. Well, I say unto you that the most important thing is love. And in loving ourselves, we can never be left out of that equation. Because if we are left out of the equation of love, then the love we are feeling is incomplete. I ask you, how can anything feel like sacrifice, no matter what you are giving away, when what you feel in your heart is the totality of love, bathed in it, lit up by it? That's what Jesus was talking about. Ridding yourself of the distractions that get in the way of love, whether they be possessions, beliefs, actions, or goals. Am I saying don't have goals and reach to achieve what is in your heart's desire to achieve? No, not even a little. I am saying whatever goals we have, no matter how important we deem these goals to be, whether they be building a center, finishing a house, making a film, being successful at what matters to us, we can achieve everything inside a container of love. And it is only when we have dropped out of that container that we suffer. And that suffering is unnecessary. Sacrifice is not necessary. And by that I mean the feeling of sacrifice. We can give away the same thing and feel it as sacrifice, or feel it as creating space for love. This is the choice we are confronted with so many moments of our lives. And let me be clear. If you cannot give away something in the container of love and instead feel resentment or upset around giving up whatever it is, don't do it. At least not at that moment. First, take time to do whatever spiritual practice you need to do it once again, and do it as much as you need to, so that you are first bathed in that container of love and then take the action. So this came up for me just this morning. Here I am writing this talk, and normally on Wednesday, Ashley's two kids are either in school or with their dad or with their grandparents, but they're not here. So I have this space to center myself and get ready for these talks. But today, they're here. And so here they are being here, and they're doing what, they're fighting, and they're watching TV loud, and they're talking loud. In other words, they're just being kids. But here I am trying to center on this thing and really feeling it like a sacrifice in terms of giving up my space to get ready for the talk for you, which cracks me up since this is exactly what I'm sitting here writing about. So I decide to try my process right here and right now, because this is what I'm here to talk about. So my process always starts with awareness. And the first step of awareness of loving yourself, loving myself, was to realize I was not doing that. So I started out by simply recognizing the awareness that I was not loving myself. And I sat with that and then went to the place of, okay, what would be loving myself now? What would it look like right now? And so organically, I just sat with that. And the first thing I noticed was that my breath softened. My shoulders relaxed. Simply by coming into the awareness that what I wanted, my choice, was to love myself. I hadn't done anything outside, hadn't gone and created any boundaries. I simply sat with the awareness. And in doing so, recognized and acknowledged that my shoulders and breath had changed. My whole body was beginning to relax. The next thing I noticed was that gratitude started bubbling up. I didn't say to myself, I should do gratitudes now. It bubbled up all by itself. Organically is the next thing, simply from holding in my consciousness what I want right now is to love myself. And so the first thing I was grateful for was my incredible wife. And then I was grateful for her kids in terms of the opportunity it gave me to practice what I wanted to preach. And I love these kids. They're great kids. And I recognized all the things I really like about them, how smart they are, how funny they are, how energetic about life they are. And I felt that in that gratitude, my body relaxed more and humor came to me. The next thing I found myself doing was laughing, which I love to do. And I had no idea when I started this process what would bubble up, but what I knew is by concentrating on loving myself, that something would to support me in having that. So after being with myself for, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes, my entire being about their being here had shifted. And having them in the space no longer bothered me. I didn't need to come out and change a thing of what they were doing. Because I had shifted. And now giving to them no longer felt like a sacrifice. It felt like a sharing of love in the space. And that's what's possible when we change the priority. Here I am thinking about loving myself, and in the end, through that, breathed into being loving towards those that are around me. It was simple, easy, and totally worth the time. If it's not selfish to take care of yourself, it is vital for the health and well-being of the planet that we are very good at this skill. Ralph Waldo Emerson tells us most of the shadows of this life are caused by standing in one's own sunshine. Get out of the way of standing in your own sunshine. Give up the belief in sacrifice and stand in a place of self-love. When we give from a place of self-love, the giving feeds us. We feel wonderful for having given. We feel fulfilled for having served others. We feel energized, uplifted, and our sunshine is very, very bright. Dr. Holmes tells us if one makes himself receptive to the idea of love, he becomes lovable. To the degree that he embodies love, he is love. So people who love are loved. So when we are talking about self-love, we are talking about embodying love. The deeper we embody love, the more love emanates through us and touches others' lives. I believe that self-love is the path to becoming the people we want to be in the world. And each one of us that masters self-love adds to the love, peace, poise, and power we want to see on the planet. Getting good at the skill of self-love allows us to embody a deeper compassion for ourselves and everyone and everything on the planet. When we become the change you wish to see, you see the change in everything around you, and the world is a much more beautiful place. Thank you. I love you.
You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of